People think there's a limit to what a man will do to save his child. They're wrong. There is no limit. Only the illusion of one. Until the moment you're sitting in a beige hospital room while a doctor explains how your 7-year-old son's liver is dissolving from the inside out. It was a rare genetic condition. Untraceable. Unforgiving. His organs were shutting down, and we were out of time. My wife, Erin, sat next to me, her nails digging half-moons into the vinyl armrest. She kept whispering, "No, no, no," like she could outwish biology. We've been on the transplant list for 9 months. No matches. Not even close. Until that Tuesday morning. Dr. Lewin came in with a clipboard, his eyes hesitant. "We found a viable donor," he said. "It's complicated." His name was Callum Miles. Mid-40s. Clean bill of health. A complete stranger. But he wasn't interested in money. "There's a condition," Lewin said. His mouth tightened like the words tasted bad. "He wants to meet privately with Mr. Harrow, alone." I remember glancing at Erin, and she looked back at me like something inside her had already died. The meeting was in a side conference room. Callum was already seated when I walked in, dressed like a man who didn't fear death. Gray suit, loosened tie, eyes too calm. He didn't introduce himself, didn't stand, just gestured to the empty seat across from him. "I assume you know what this is about," he said. "My son," I said. "You're a match." He nodded slowly. "And you're his father." Then he leaned forward. "I'm not interested in money. But I do want something. Something only your wife can give me." There was no metaphor in his voice. I said nothing. Couldn't speak. The air felt thick. "I don't mean violence," he added, casual, "or anything grotesque. I want a night. One night. With her. She doesn't have to pretend to like me. Doesn't even have to speak. Just be present. That's all." He said it like he was asking for a glass of water. "She won't agree to that," I said. "She already has," he replied. "She called me this morning. Said she'd do it, if you said yes." I don't remember standing. I don't remember walking out. But I remember the hallway. How fluorescent the lights were. How people walked by carrying their coffees and clipboards like nothing had just been bartered. I didn't speak to Erin for the rest of that day. Not until after the surgery was done. Our son, Mason, pulled through. The transplant was successful. The doctors called it a miracle. The day he came home, he hugged me tighter than he ever had before. "You didn't let me die," he whispered. I cried in the laundry room after he went to bed. Not because I was grateful, but because I didn't know if I deserved that sentence. It wasn't the night that broke me. Not the image of her walking out the front door in a dress I'd never seen, or the way she didn't look at me before she left. It was what came after. Weeks passed, then months. Our boy got stronger. Erin and I pretended at normalcy, school drop-offs, grocery lists, shared glances over breakfast. But I couldn't touch her. At first, I thought it was temporary. A psychological response. Trauma. But it persisted. I'd roll over in bed, reach for her out of habit, and pull back like I'd touched a stovetop. She noticed. Of course she did. One night, she asked, "Are you ever going to look at me the same way again?" I didn't answer. I just stared at the ceiling. Because the truth was no. I wasn't. I couldn't. I was the one who told her yes. I was the one who greenlit it. But every time I saw her now, I saw him. It wasn't just jealousy. It wasn't anger. It was something worse. A hollowing. It's been a year. Mason's healthy. His labs are stable. He likes soccer now and asks me weird questions about the moon. He's alive. That should be enough. But I don't sleep. I don't dream. I just lie next to the woman who saved him and wonder what we destroyed to make that possible. A few nights ago, I watched her brush her hair in the mirror. Same rhythm as always. Same lavender lotion. But something was different. She smiled to herself. I asked, "Have you seen him since?" She froze. The silence lasted too long. Then she said, "No, of course not." But the way she said it made something shift in me, something permanent, because I knew, in that instant, she was lying. And for the first time since all of it began, I wasn't sure who I had really saved. Erin never lied well. She wasn't the type to fabricate, she omitted, paused too long between words, shifted her weight like she wanted to leave the conversation before it began. No, of course not, she'd said, and then looked down. That look stayed with me for days. I didn't accuse her, not outright. There's a dignity to silence that I've clung to, even when it cuts deeper than confrontation. Instead, I started paying attention to the way she lingered by the window when she thought no one was looking, the way her phone stayed face down on the counter now, always locked. She deleted her text history. She'd never done that before, not even during fights. I noticed it by accident. Mason had borrowed her phone to play some dinosaur game. I went to check something for him and opened messages out of habit. Blank. A full slate of nothing. Just cleaning things up, she said when I asked. Too many junk messages. It sounded reasonable, logical, but it wasn't true, because she'd always left her phone a mess. Notifications stacked like bricks. Threads going back years. The clean slate wasn't organization. It was erasure. I didn't press her. Didn't say a word. I just nodded and handed the phone back. But that night I barely slept. In my dreams, I saw her walking into that hotel room again. Only this time, she wasn't afraid. She wasn't doing it for Mason. She was smiling. The next morning, I watched her from the hallway while she made his lunch. She was humming. Something soft and familiar, an old Ben Howard song we used to play when we were happy. Her hips moved slightly as she reached into the fridge. That unconscious sway she used to have when she felt beautiful. And for a moment, I hated her. Not for what she'd done, but for how easily she'd slip back into the body of someone untouched. I couldn't even hold her hand without remembering his. Later that week, I did something I'm not proud of. I followed her. She said she had a dentist appointment. Routine cleaning. Left at 2:15 sharp. I waited 5 minutes, then grabbed my keys and went after her. She didn't go to the dentist. She drove across town to the edge of the city, pulled into the parking lot of a mid-range hotel just off the highway. A Best Western, bland and anonymous. I parked across the street, watched her go in. No hesitation, no looking back. 34 minutes later, she came out. Alone. She didn't look guilty. She looked neutral, like she dropped something off. She got in the car and drove home. I stayed behind, heart rattling against my ribs. I didn't confront her. I didn't even ask. Because the moment you ask, you enter a new phase. One where the truth is weight. One where decisions have to be made. And I wasn't ready for that yet. Instead, I tested her. Quietly. I asked her to go away for a weekend. Just the two of us. Told her we deserved it. A break from hospitals, from grief, from guilt. She hesitated. Just for a second. Then smiled. Of course. That sounds perfect. But the week before the trip, she got sick. Headache, sore throat, couldn't keep food down. I offered to take care of her. But she waved me off. Said she just needed sleep. Rest. Said she didn't want to get me sick. The timing was too perfect. So I checked the hotel again. Called them, pretending I was confirming a reservation for the Harrows. The man on the line paused. Then said, "Oh, Erin?" Yes, she was just here. Monday and Thursday. Same suite as usual. My stomach turned. I thanked him and hung up. My hands were shaking, but my voice was calm. That night at dinner, I watched her pass the mashed potatoes to Mason with that same easy grace she's always had. He asked her if dinosaurs had ever gotten sick like him. She smiled, ruffled his hair, said maybe that's why they went extinct. He laughed. He's got her laugh. Light, effortless, a little too pretty for this world. And all I could think was, you would have let him die if I said no. You'd made the call before I did. And now, you're going back to him. After Mason went to bed, I sat across from her in the living room. The lights were low. She was flipping through a book she wasn't really reading. "Who is he?" I asked. She didn't look up, didn't pretend not to know what I meant. Instead, she closed the book and rested her hands on top of it. "Does it matter?" she asked. I stared at her, waiting, but she didn't elaborate, just held that silence like a threat. "I just want to know," I said. "If it's him. If it's the man who, It is," she said. Quiet. Not ashamed. Not proud. "Callum." I nodded slowly. She looked at me for the first time then, and there was something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Not guilt. Not fear. Peace. "I didn't plan for this," she said, "but I don't regret what I did. We have our son. He's alive. So this is gratitude?" I asked. "Is that what this is?" "No," she said. "It's not gratitude." I waited for her to finish, but she didn't. Just stood up, walked past me, and went upstairs. The silence she left behind was enormous. I sat there for hours, listening to the sound of Mason's humidifier through the baby monitor, wondering if I'd saved the wrong person. I tried to forget the name Callum, but once it was spoken, it stayed. It sat in the back of my mind like a locked drawer you're suddenly aware of every time you pass through the room. I started digging, not for revenge, not even clarity, just to feel like I still had agency, like I wasn't some silent partner in my own humiliation. The name gave me something to work with. A few internet searches, a handful of reverse lookups, and there he was, Callum Miles. 46. Retired defense contractor. No wife, no kids. Owned property in 3 states. And something else, he wasn't just a match. He was once on the transplant list himself. A liver candidate. That detail stopped me cold. Because liver donors aren't typically people who've needed one themselves. Unless something changed. Unless they were removed from the list for reasons not disclosed. I called the hospital. Asked for Dr. Lewin under the pretense of needing records for insurance. When he answered, I dropped the act. "I need you to tell me something. Off the record." Silence. Then, quietly, "This is about Callum. I need to know why he was even a candidate. What was his motive?" Lewin exhaled through his nose. "Motive," he repeated. "That's not a word we use much in medicine, but you know what I mean." He hesitated, then said, "Let's just say." I had my reservations, but Erin insisted. She said she'd met him through a patient advocacy forum. I blinked. "She what?" "She said they'd been in contact for weeks," Lewin continued. She framed it like she'd convinced him, that it was her persistence, her storytelling, that moved him, that he wanted to give back. I felt the room tilt. My skin flushed hot. She'd never mentioned that. Never once told me they had spoken before the day he made his offer. Was that true? I asked. Lewin didn't answer. "Doctor," he sighed, "I can't verify it. We don't screen for intent, Jacob. Only compatibility." And Callum was medically sound. Erin gave us the green light. "So did you?" I hung up. The silence in the house was unbearable after that. It wasn't just that Erin had seen him again. It was that maybe she always had. That maybe the night she gave up her body wasn't the beginning. Maybe it was the end. I started looking at our life differently. The cracks that felt like stress fractures from grief began to feel like blueprints. She had reached out to him. That's what Lewin said. Why? Why didn't she tell me? She'd cried in that room. I remember. The day Callum made his offer, she cried in the corner of that cold hospital meeting space, shoulders shaking. I thought it was shame. Or horror. But what if it was something else? What if she was crying because the charade was almost over? That night, I went through her things. I waited until she was asleep, Mason tucked in, humidifier humming like white noise from a better world, and I opened the drawer she always kept locked. She started locking it last winter. Told me she kept pain meds there, just in case. For migraines. She'd been getting them more often. I didn't believe that anymore. The key was still taped behind the headboard, just like she used to hide our spare when Mason was a toddler. I slipped it out, clicked the lock open. Inside, a stack of papers, a box of receipts, a printed photo I hadn't seen in years, her and Mason in the garden, smiling. But her eyes weren't on him. They were on whoever had taken the photo. And beneath all that, letters, handwritten, pages of them, all addressed to E. No signature, but I knew the handwriting wasn't hers. You said your boy was worth anything. I still think about that night, about how quiet you were afterward. I dream about the things we could have been if the world were crueler to him and kinder to us. This wasn't about a liver. You know that. I don't regret a single inch of you. I sat on the floor for a long time after reading those. The heater clicked on beside me, but I didn't feel any of it. The next morning, I made coffee like always. Mason played with his cereal. Erin came down in her robe, kissed his forehead. Sleep okay? I asked. She looked up, eyes tired but warm. Well enough. I nodded, stirred my coffee, said nothing. But my hands were shaking so badly I had to put the cup down. That night, after Mason was asleep, I tried to ask her again. How long did you know him before the transplant? She turned the page in her book. What kind of question is that? An honest one. She closed the book, didn't speak for a while. Then she said, why are you asking things you already know the answer to? It was the way she said it. Quiet. Almost tired. Like I was inconveniencing her grief. And then, softer, we did what we had to do. You said yes. I said yes to save her son, I snapped. Not to open the door to someone who what, she said. Saw me? Understood me? Didn't just see a mother but a woman? I stared at her. The air between us felt like static. I never meant for it to go this far, she said. But it did. And he made me feel like something other than broken. I don't remember standing, or the glass I dropped, or the shards on the kitchen floor. I just remember her expression calm, like she'd already made peace with the wreckage. You think betrayal is a moment, a decision, a single night, a name in a hotel registry. But sometimes betrayal isn't a choice. It's a design, a trap so quiet you don't hear it close until the air thins, until everything you love is already behind the glass. It started with the photo. I kept returning to it, the one from Erin's drawer. Mason in the garden, 5 years younger. Her in that sundress I always loved. But what caught me wasn't their smiles. It was the shadow, the one just visible in the corner of the frame, cast along the brick wall. A man, tall, square-shouldered, holding the camera. Not me. I didn't take that picture. I tried to remember who had. A family friend? Erin's sister? One of the nurses from Mason's early care team? But no name fit. No memory surfaced. I pulled the photo out of its plastic sleeve and turned it over. Written on the back, in blue ink. May 17th. You looked so alive that day. See, Callum. 3 years before Mason's transplant. I felt something cold in my chest, like falling into water. I sat down, turned the photo over again, stared at the date. May 17th. That night, I found old backup drives from my work computer, sifted through years of digital debris, emails, spreadsheets, expense reports. I searched her name, his name. Nothing. But then I remembered the advocacy forums, the one she'd told Lewin about. She joined one early on, back when Mason was first diagnosed. A digital space for parents of children with chronic illness. She used a screen name back then, E_Lantern. I found the forum. Still active. Still open. I created a fake profile. Searched old posts. There she was commenting on therapies, medications, night terrors. And then I saw the replies. Dozens of them. From someone called C. Thornwood. He always responded to her. Long, detailed messages. Empathetic. Curious. Intelligent. Always just enough warmth to pass as friendly. But the tone shifted after a few months. His replies became more personal, talking about grief, about lost family, about love in impossible places. Then came this one. We never choose the people we connect with. Sometimes we're just led to them, by circumstance, by pain, by fate. It was dated 2 years before the transplant. They'd been in contact long before the offer. And if he'd taken that photo, they'd met. In person. At least once. Possibly more. I confronted her the next night. I waited until Mason was asleep. Waited until she was brushing her teeth with the bathroom door half open. I held the photo in my hand like a weapon. "You lied to me," I said. She met my eyes in the mirror. Didn't flinch. "You said you met him after the donor match. That he came to you." She turned off the tap. Pat dried her mouth. Stepped into the hallway. Her robe hung loose at her collarbone, like she wasn't planning to defend herself. "I didn't say that exactly," she replied. "I said I met him through the process. You said he made the offer, and you called me." Her jaw twitched. "It doesn't matter." "It does," I said, holding the photo out. "He took this 3 years before the transplant. You were already in contact. You were already—" I stopped. Couldn't finish the sentence. "I was desperate," she said. "You don't know what it was like back then. Mason wasn't stable. The waiting list was getting longer. You were barely holding on. I needed something to hope for. So you found him. He found me. That stopped me." She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands in her lap. "Bare. Still. He messaged me first. On the forum. Said he lost someone once. Said he understood. At first it was just support. But then—" She trailed off. "He came to the hospital once. Said he had contacts. That he could help with early screening. I didn't question it. I let him in." I stared at her. "You let him into our lives. I let him into mine." The air went dead. She looked up. Eyes wide now. Not defensive. Honest. "He was kind. He made me feel safe. He made me believe Mason had a chance." Her voice broke, just slightly. "And I didn't know how to tell you. Because I was scared. Because part of me—" She swallowed hard. Part of me didn't want it to stop. That was the worst part. The honesty. If she'd cried, if she'd yelled, if she'd begged for forgiveness, I might have forgiven her. But she said it quietly, with calm, with a kind of grace. She meant it. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the photo still on the dresser. I listened to the soft creak of pipes, the buzz of the fridge. Our house had become a tomb for truths. In the morning, I emailed the forum moderators. Said I was conducting a legal inquiry. Asked for account records for C. Thornwood. One responded within a day. Said the account had been deactivated a year ago, but the IP was traceable. I looked it up. It belonged to a rural property, outside Deerfield, 3 hours from us, owned by a trust linked to one name, Callum Miles. I drove out there. Didn't tell Aaron. The road narrowed as I neared the address. Pine trees like sentinels lining the gravel path. A long, unmarked driveway. No mailbox. The house wasn't what I expected. Small, weather-beaten, A-frame structure with peeling paint and fogged windows. But the car in the driveway was clean, polished, like someone was home. I parked on the shoulder, walked the last 100 yards. I knocked once, waited. Then the door opened, and there he was, Callum, older than the photo, gray at the temples, a scar along his right cheek I hadn't seen before. But it was him. He didn't look surprised. Not at all. "Jacob," he said. "I was wondering when you'd come." "Jacob," Callum said again, standing in the doorway like he'd been rehearsing it. The way he said my name didn't sound casual. It didn't even sound familiar. It sounded like ownership. He stepped back and held the door open. "Come in." I made coffee. I didn't move. Not right away. Because suddenly the air felt thinner out here, like the trees had stopped breathing. The quiet was too perfect. And his tone, It wasn't the voice of a man caught. It was the voice of a man finally allowed to speak freely. But I stepped inside anyway. The house was simple, like it hadn't changed since the 70s. Exposed beams, pine-paneled walls, a wood-burning stove flickering with old heat. On the wall above the fireplace hung a framed photo. My breath caught. It was Erin, smiling, holding Mason as a toddler. And next to her, slightly out of frame, a man's arm wrapped around her waist. It wasn't mine. I thought you should see where it all started, Callum said, setting 2 mugs on the table. This place, it was never mine. Not really. It was hers. I looked at him, confused. He followed my eyes. It belonged to her father. Did she ever tell you that? That she spent summers here, long before she met you? I didn't speak. She was 15 the last time she visited. He died not long after. Left it to an old family friend. That friend sold it. And 10 years later, I bought it. By accident, I thought. Until I found her initials carved into the tree behind the shed. He sipped his coffee like he was recounting a dream. That's when I realized. It wasn't an accident. It was a beginning. I sat down across from him. Slowly. What do you want from me? I asked. Nothing, he said. Not anymore. You used her. You inserted yourself into our lives when we were vulnerable. He smiled. Not smug. Not cruel. But something close to pity. No, he said softly. I loved her. My stomach twisted. You manipulated her. She came to me, he replied. You keep telling yourself it was all my design. But the truth is, people don't get pulled into affairs. They step into them. Willingly. He stood then. Walked over to the window, looking out at the trees. The air between us buzzed with something weightless and mean. She was lonely, Jacob, he said. Even before Mason got sick. I could feel it in her words, even online. You'd already left her emotionally. I just gave her a place to land. You exploited a woman whose child was dying. He turned. And you traded her for that child. I stood then. Fast. Chair scraping hard against the floor. I didn't trade her. But you did, he said, his voice now colder. You told yourself you were saving your son, but part of you is glad. Glad to outsource the guilt. Glad to let someone else hold what you couldn't touch anymore. I clenched my fists. My chest tightened. You think I didn't suffer? I said. You think I didn't die in that room when you made your offer? I gave up everything for him. I gave up the woman I loved, because I had to. Callum nodded slowly, then stepped closer. Then don't lie to yourself now, he said. You didn't just give her up, Jacob. You gave her permission. That's the part that keeps you up at night. The words hit like a slap. Because they were true. Somewhere, in the folds of my desperation, I hadn't just allowed her to go. I'd needed her to. Because it meant I didn't have to hold everything anymore. He walked past me then, into the narrow hallway. Gestured for me to follow. I don't know why I did. But I did. The hallway opened into a back room. Shelves lined with boxes. On the wall, photos, letters, printouts. It looked like a shrine. But it wasn't to Erin. It was to Mason. Report cards. Medical scans. Artwork from preschool. Photos I'd never seen. Mason in the park. Mason laughing with Erin. Some of them taken from a distance, like he'd been watching. My skin went cold. You've been following them. He didn't deny it. I needed to know he was okay, he said. I needed to know what I helped save wasn't a mistake. I turned to him slowly. You think he's yours? Callum said nothing. And in that silence, the floor of everything dropped. You said you never, I started. You said it was just that night. He looked at me. I never said that, he said. She did. My knees went weak. Erin said you only met after. She lied, Callum said gently. To protect you. My breath caught. She was already pregnant, he said. She found out just after the first time. She told me months later. Said it didn't matter, that you were the father in every way that counted. I respected that. I staggered back. The world tipped sideways. No, I said. No. He's my son. She would have told me. She was protecting him, he said. From this. From what you're feeling right now. I wanted to scream. To hit something. To burn the room to the ground. But I couldn't move. I don't want custody. I don't want visitation. I don't want anything from you, Jacob Callum said softly. But I needed you to know. Because you've been living a lie. And so has he. The drive home was a blur. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just drove, hands fixed at 10 and 2, the road unspooling like something endless. When I got home, Erin was on the porch. She saw me step out of the car, and her face drained. You went to see him, she said. I didn't answer. She stepped forward. Jacob. Is he mine? She froze. I stepped closer. Is he mine? Her eyes glistened. Her lips parted. But she didn't speak. That was the answer. I turned and walked inside. Behind me, she didn't follow. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the hallway outside Mason's room, the carpet cold against my spine. His door cracked open just enough for the sound of his breathing to slip out like a tether. Every rise and fall of his chest was a war I'd fought for. Every sigh, every rustle of bedsheets. My son. Not by blood, but by every scraped knee I kissed. Every night, I carried him into hospital rooms with IVs tangled around his wrist. Every time I made him believe the monsters under his bed weren't real, even as the real ones sat in white coats and whispered prognosis outside his door. But now there was a monster inside me. I couldn't stop staring at my hands. The same hands that held him in the NICU. That learned to twist open medication bottles in the dark, that signed the papers that let Callum walk into our lives like a savior with teeth behind his smile. And Erin hadn't come to bed. I heard her moving downstairs once, maybe the fridge opening, a chair scraping, but she never came up. Maybe she knew I couldn't look at her. Not yet. Maybe she was just as lost. In the morning, Mason bounded into the kitchen like he always did, barefoot, wild-haired, asking about pancakes and dinosaurs. And I made them, because what else could I do? We sat at the table together, him talking about a dream he had where he was flying a spaceship made of toast. And I nodded, smiling where I was supposed to. My hands moved on their own, pouring syrup, cutting pieces, wiping his chin. He didn't know. He couldn't know. Not today. Not ever. After breakfast, Erin appeared at the doorway. She looked hollow, pale. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then tried. I wanted to tell you. I couldn't. I didn't answer. She stepped forward, voice trembling. I didn't plan any of it, Jacob. Not the first message. Not the visit. Not Mason. I swear to you. When I found out I was pregnant, I wanted it to be yours so badly I convinced myself it was. And when the timeline didn't add up, I asked. Her silence was the answer. I thought, she said, after everything we'd been through, after the transplant, after the healing, that it didn't matter. That he was ours in the only way that counted. He is, I said. But you let me believe a lie. She nodded. I did. You let me build a life on it. I know. And now. Her voice broke. Now I just want you to stay. I didn't respond. Just walked past her into the living room. The house felt unfamiliar now. Every photo frame. Every memory sealed in drywall and paint. I picked one up. Mason in his first Halloween costume. A dinosaur so big he couldn't fit through doorways. He was laughing. I was in the background, holding his hand. That moment was real, wasn't it? I left that day. I didn't take a suitcase. Didn't say goodbye. Just drove. I spent 3 days in a motel on the edge of town. The kind with flickering lights and vending machines that eat your change. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't answer Erin's texts. I stared at the ceiling and let the ache live in my chest like it had earned the space. On the third night, I called my father. Told him the truth. Or parts of it. Enough to get silence on the other end. He asked me one thing. Do you still love him? And I didn't hesitate. Yes. Then the answer came like a stone in a pond. Then go home. So I did. Erin was on the porch again. Same chair. Same robe. Her eyes swollen, lips raw from chewing. She didn't speak, just stood as I stepped closer. I don't forgive you, I said. Not yet. She nodded. I know. I may never. I know that too. But Mason, he doesn't deserve to lose us both. She looked down at that. Her hands shook. I'll stay, I said. For him. Her tears came then. Quiet. No sobbing. Just water tracing lines down her cheeks. We slept in separate rooms after that. I moved into the guest room, the one we painted sea green back when we thought we might have a second child. It was never finished. Still had painter's tape along the edges. Still smelled faintly of dust and dried hope. We didn't speak much. Only when Mason was around. We smiled for him. We laughed when we needed to. We played the parts. And over time, something like a rhythm formed. Not healing, not forgiveness, just function. I watched her more than I spoke to her. Watched how she looked at Mason when he wasn't watching. How she whispered, I'm sorry, under her breath when she thought no one could hear. And sometimes, just sometimes, I believed she meant it. One night, months later, Mason crawled into my bed after a nightmare. Curled into my chest like he did when he was small. His breath warm against my neck. Daddy, he said sleepily. Will you always be my dad? I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just held him tighter. Always, I whispered. No matter what. Because in the end, love isn't biology. It isn't even truth. It's presence. Repetition. The choice you make, over and over, even after everything breaks. I didn't forgive Erin. I didn't forget Callum. But I stayed. And every morning, I packed Mason's lunch, kissed his forehead, and watched him walk out the door. Because betrayal doesn't have to define a life. But love does. Thanks for watching. If this story pulled you in, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next confession. Until next time, take care and watch who you trust.